Good morning, everybody. I'm Rob Evans, and welcome back to Daybreak Plus, where we are recapping all the local news you missed overnight, and then we go deep into the topics that matter to you. And today we are diving into the measles outbreak right here in Central Texas. We're going to have more on that coming up in just a few minutes. But first, we begin with what you need to know as you head out the door. We begin at the Texas State Capitol, where lawmakers will hold a public hearing this morning on two bills that they say will make Texans healthier. Talking about Senate Bill 25 and Senate Bill 314. So we start with Senate Bill 25. This will expand physical education requirements for kids in public schools. It would require nutrition education for all Texas physicians and med students. It would create a Texas Nutrition Advisory Committee as well and require warning labels for products that have chemicals and additives that are already banned by countries outside of the U.S. Now, Senate Bill 314 would ban certain additives in free or reduced school lunches and the breakfast program as well. And lawmakers say they want to address the causes of chronic illnesses and increase the healthier food options. Here's a State Senator Brian Hughes. Take a listen.
The choice before them is to eat what's before them or go hungry, consume dangerous chemicals, or be malnourished. If an ingredient is linked to severe human harm, is unnecessary, and alternatives are available, state law will prohibit it from being served on that child's plate. This bill will.
Now, another senator has a bill to prevent SNAP benefits from being used on things like soda, energy drinks, candy, potato chips, and cookies. No hearing has been set of that bill yet, but the hearing on the other two bills will start at 8 o'clock this morning. Now, Governor Greg Abbott continues to make his case for education savings accounts. Maybe you hear called school vouchers. During the Texas Republicans' legislative dinner in Georgetown last night, which you're looking at right there, he pushed back against critics who say, hey, this program would defund public schools. Now, ESAs would allow parents to use taxpayer money to help pay for private education, about $10,000 per student. The governor denies, though, that plan will only benefit rich Texans. Take a listen to what he had to say last night.
The fact of the matter is the rich already have access to school choice. This provides a level playing field for every family to be able to choose the best school for their child. One thing I have observed over time that I wouldn't be surprised if maybe you have made the similar observation. When you look at the arguments made by leftists, they're kind of outrageous arguments. And they'll make them over and over again. Heart every single night that mom needs the ability and outlet to be able to from any parent.
Now, the governor thanked the state senate for passing his version of the school voucher bill and admits there is going to be a challenge to get it passed in the Texas House. The House Committee on Public Education met for the first time during the regular session. Some lawmakers brought concerns about how many educators in Texas are not certified as well. Last month, the Texas Education Agency, TEA, released new data showing that 56% of new Texas teachers are uncertified, more than half of them. State law allows that, and it's allowing districts to hire help faster, right? There's been a teacher shortage for quite some time. Austin State Representative Gina Hinojosa raised concerns about how it's affecting classroom learning. She asked TE Commissioner Mike Morath if there's anything lawmakers can do to better fund educator preparation programs, and hear what they had to say.
Speak to that.
Well, you haven't really cut any funding for educator preparation programs because you never funded them in the first place. They are just naturally going away because fewer candidates are choosing to use their own hard-earned money to cover those costs.
Now, the House's sweeping school finance bill, HB 2, would no longer allow districts to hire uncertified teachers to teach core courses like math, science, or language arts. It would also increase funding for the state's teacher incentive allotment program, which aims to reward high-performing teachers. Also happening today, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing the NCAA. Now, he wants the organization to force gender testing or sex screenings on student athletes. This is in response to President Donald Trump's executive order banning men from competing in women's sports. A policy released this month by NCAA says that an athlete born a man cannot compete on a women's team, but can still take part in practices. AG Paxton says this violates the executive order. If a gender testing policy were put in place, more than 500,000 student athletes would be impacted. Now, the NCAA has not commented yet on the state's demands. Oh, Boomtown is KVUE's coverage of growth in Central Texas, and boy, is it growing, right? We know this. The city of Austin is gearing up to tear down the Austin Convention Center. Why? They can make it bigger and better. Leaders showed us what the space will look like when it's finally done. It will nearly double in size. It'll serve as a cultural hub for Austinites and for visitors. Take a look at it right there, just screen there, very beautiful. The expansion set to add an outdoor event space. It is pedestrian-friendly paths, you see right there as well. The convention's director, Tricia Tratto, says she's excited to see the project come to fruition. Take a listen.
It's going to be very engaging for the community with retail spaces, outdoor event spaces, and something that we believe that the citizens of Austin will be very proud of.
Now, the whole project is set to cost about, listen to this, $1.6 billion. I think that's about the price of the AT&T Stadium, isn't it? In Dallas, that's a lot of money there. Money for the expansion, by the way, coming from convention center revenue and the city's hotel occupancy tax. Construction set to start in April. And it should wrap up in time for the 2029 Spring Festival season. It is 7:07 right now, and let's get a look now. Weather and traffic, because it's feeling like spring. A little bit warm this morning. Grace and Hannah, starting with Grace. What can we expect for the rest of the day?
All right, yeah, we are starting off warm, Rob. We're at 60 degrees over at the airport right now, so if you're headed over that way, you may not need the jacket if you're, flying out of town. I mean, especially if you're going to another place, you may need the jacket, but not here in Austin this morning. 60 degrees there. We do have some overlying clouds out there, low-level clouds, even the potential for some fog, of course. We haven't gotten rid of that condition just yet this week. Downtown Austin looking a little bluey. Obviously that sun is starting to rise. 7:08 is your time this morning. Let's take a look at that fog across the area. Now, we do not have a dense fog advisory for us here in Austin. This is going to be east of our Austin viewing area over towards Houston. Houston doesn't even have one out for them. It's just kind of snaking through that middle area there. And again, that will likely lift about 10 a.m. this morning. Doesn't mean that we're not experiencing fog, though. We have some patchy fog across the area, especially up towards Llano, probably in those kind of river valley areas up towards Lake Buchanan, Lake Travis as well, Inks Lake too, be on the watch for that. But most of that fog is actually off to the far east. Giddings, LaGrange, around a half a mile to a quarter mile of visibility right now. We're even seeing some numbers fall towards San Marcos as well as Pflugerville. Those areas usually collect a little bit of a visibility issue when we do see fog, so just be aware of that as you're headed out to work in school this morning. As we head through the day today, we are going to see those clouds lighten up, a lot more sunshine in the forecast, and maybe some clouds kind of reaching back in as we head towards the the late afternoon, that is around 5 p.m. But that's still going to help out our temperatures for this afternoon, that little bit of sunshine that we do get. 79 for Austin. Up towards the hill country, you'll see potentially the upper 80s are expected. Here's a look at today's forecast. I do think we are going to hit around 80 for the Austin Metro today. Again, fog makes way for sunshine this afternoon. Sunset around 6:30 this evening. Allergy count. A lot of people spending a lot of time outside over the past couple of days because we're seeing such spring-like temperatures in our forecast. Cedar has now spiked up to the high category in the past 24 hours, so please take your allergy medication. I promise we're almost done with cedar season. We haven't really seen a big spike like this probably since January, so it may be affecting you. If you're feeling a little bit groggy this morning, that's probably what it is. Still on the way for this spring, though. Oak in April, that's going to start to show up on the map here. Elm as well as ash in the next few weeks, too. And then, of course, mold is always troublesome, especially as we head towards May when we get a little bit more wetness in the atmosphere. That's one of our wetter months of the year, that and October. Next 3 days, we are expecting some changes with a cold front incoming tonight and tomorrow, cooling things down to the 60s for tomorrow. And then we'll be right back up to the 70s and 80s in no time. But let's time out that cold front for us as we head into tonight and tomorrow morning. You'll see that moves or starts to move through around 5 a.m. tomorrow and then cools us down as we head through our Thursday. Those temperatures will likely be around 60 degrees, mid 60s to upper 60s across the area. As for future rainfall, we're not really expecting much across the area. As for our 7-day rainfall totals, though, you'll see that both of the European and the GFS model are hinting at a little bit more moisture out there. That's because we are expecting another upper level system to be making its way across the southern Great Plains on next Tuesday. Now, as we head into Tuesday, you'll see a little bit more moisture for Tuesday night, but most of those showers and thunderstorms, or at least potential severe weather, will actually set up to the east of us over the Mississippi Valley there. So that's Wednesday morning. You can see that the National Weather Service has already outlined areas of East Texas for possible severe storms. And again, that's going to be next Tuesday that we're watching that. And of course, you know, this polygon could shift a little bit closer to Austin as well in the next couple of days as we get some more information. But we certainly need that rainfall. Here's a look at the updated drought monitor from last week. Still seeing severe to extreme drought for portions of Travis County all the way down into Hays and Blanco, as well as Gillespie County. All right, back to our 7-day forecast. Things are taking a little bit of a change over the next 24 hours with that cold front moving through, but we can certainly handle the 60s after the past 2 weeks, you know, handling single digits in some places. All right, and then after that, Friday into Saturday and Sunday, this weekend looks absolutely beautiful for us here in Central Texas. By Monday and Tuesday, again, we'll be watching that upper level system for you guys and, you know, grinding out all those details as we head into next week. But let's get a look at the roadways. Hannah, are you seeing any fog issues out there?
Ooh, that 7-day is looking good. Can we talk about Friday? That looks absolutely perfect. And as far as the roads right now, you might remember it was this time yesterday that fog was kind of gobbling up some of our cameras, almost like a curtain, creating that low visibility. Looking much better today. We have a couple crashes to talk about, but already looking better heading southbound from Round Rock. We were seeing some stop and go there approaching Palmer Lane, and then kind of business as usual heading northbound, coming in from South Austin near Slaughter. And you can kind of see we've got like a cluster of crashes all east of I-35 so far this morning. Looks like that incident off of Lewis Henna cleared up, so that's nice. And then things are looking a lot better moving in from the Round Rock area. We do have a new crash, though, in the McNeil neighborhood right off of Howard Lane, causing some slowdowns there. Seeing a little bit of stop and go on Mopac towards the Domain area. And this actually just happened right across from the Tesla Gigafactory. There's actually a vehicle fire right now on Tesla Road heading southbound at FM 973. So I'm going to keep my eye on that for you. Also seeing a little bit of stop and go if you're moving in from Garfield on 71 approaching the Del Valle area. And then also seeing our typical slowdown there in the northbound lanes on 183 heading out towards the South Austin terminal so far this morning. The good news is we had a crash a little bit earlier in the Leander area on the 183 toll road. That is cleared up. You can see just still a little bit of that stop and go, but not too bad. And so looking much better compared to earlier. Aside from that, we also have a couple traffic signal failures here and there. Treat them as a 4-way stop if you would. They're working those to get those fixed up for you right now. And then other than that, looking much better than yesterday and going to kind of just take it a little bit at a time. And as you can see there, about 3 miles of stop and go coming in from South Austin on this Wednesday morning.
And thank you very much. Happening right now, TxDOT says, watch out for a toll bill scam circulating through text messages. I actually got one of these on my phone. These messages claim you have an unpaid or past due toll bill. Take a look at it right there. Exact same one I got. Different phone number, same message. If you get a text like this, do not click on the link. Do not respond to the text. Just delete it. Text tag and the Harris County Toll Road Authority do not send text messages about balances due. So now you know. Well, overnight on the federal level, the U.S. House passed a budget plan that includes trillions of dollars in tax cuts. Trillions with a T. Massive. ABC's Nicole D'Antonio has more on what this means for your family.
This morning, the House barely passing the Republican budget resolution by 2 votes. The measure calls for $4.5 trillion in tax cuts and a $2 trillion reduction in federal spending, which could lead to cuts for programs like Medicaid, which is used by some 80 million Americans. Tuesday's vote was a crucial moment for Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson, who was dealing with a razor-thin majority.
We're going to celebrate tonight, and we'll roll up our sleeves and get right back at it in the morning. Thank you so much.
Meanwhile, Democrats universally opposing the budget resolution. Representative Brittany Peterson, who was on maternity leave, even showing up to vote with her young son.
Unfortunately, I wasn't given the opportunity to vote remotely after giving birth, but I wasn't going to let that stop me from being here to represent my constituents and vote no on this disastrous Republican budget proposal.
Ahead of the vote, Democrats organized a protest outside the U.S. Capitol. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries slamming the Republican budget plan. It comes as backlash continues over DOJ's efforts to shrink the size of the federal government, firing thousands of workers. Voters confronting lawmakers at town hall meetings nationwide.
The measure now heads to the Senate, where senators must decide if they will pass the House version intact or the one they passed on Friday, setting up an intra-party clash. Nicole D'Antonio, ABC News, Washington.
Well, I don't know if you've seen this yet. Look at this video right here. This is absolutely mind-blowing. That Southwest Airlines jet was just about to land when a private jet crossed right in front of it. This was in Chicago. This near collision is just shocking. This is at Midway Airport. Unbelievable. Rihanna Ali reports the pilot of that jet was warned more than once to stop. Take a look.
New details overnight about the near collision at Chicago's Midway Airport. This Southwest flight from Omaha was just about to land when you can see a private jet taxis in front of it, forcing the Southwest pilot to abort the landing.
You know, we descended down. You got that stomach feeling of you're about to land. Then all of a sudden it just goes right back up.
After climbing back into the sky, the Southwest pilots asked traffic control what happened.
Tower Southwest 2504, how'd that happen?
Our Chicago station, WLS, reports the pilot of the private jet initially read back bad information from the air traffic controller. Air traffic control then corrected the information and warned the jet's pilot to hold short of the runway, reportedly issuing the warning 9 times. It's unclear why the pilot did not follow those instructions. The FAA and NTSB are now investigating. FlexJet, the owner of the private business jet, which was flying to Knoxville, says any action to rectify and ensure the highest safety standards will be taken.
Once again, we see that human error may have played a role, whether it was in the cockpit or in the control tower. But it's becoming the most dangerous place for aviation, and that is on the ground.
All of this coming after a Delta flight with 80 people on board caught fire and flipped upside down in Toronto this month. And last month, an American Airlines flight collided with a helicopter over Washington, killing 67 people. Experts say better technology is needed to improve airport traffic.
The FAA needs to increase its funding and increase deployment of the kinds of capabilities and technologies that will prevent these kinds of incidents from happening again.
Rihanna Ali, ABC News, New York.
That video is almost just unbelievable to see, right? 9 times that private jet pilot was warned to not cross the runway, and thank goodness that Southwest Airlines pilot, that individual saved a whole lot of lives right there, as you just saw on camera. All right, well, the measles outbreak, to our big story right now, right? The deep dive is growing in Texas. State health services reported 124 cases since late January. Now, most of them are in Gaines County in West Texas, mostly impacting young, unvaccinated people. 119 cases are in unvaccinated or unknown vaccination status people. No cases have been reported in Central Texas, but Hays County health officials have warned of a possible exposure. As we told you earlier, a person who tested positive visited San Marcos on Valentine's Day and the next day as well, ate at several restaurants, went to Buc-ee's, went to Twin Peaks, went to all these popular places. So if you were in those areas, check out yourself, make sure you're okay. Now, the best way to prevent getting sick is to get 2 doses, doctors say, of the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, MMR. If you think you've been exposed, contact your local health department for further instructions. Do not leave your home if you have symptoms. Stay home. Don't go to the doctor. Don't go to the hospital. It is very contagious. Call a health care provider immediately. Avoid exposing others near you. Again, the best way to avoid it, doctors say, the MMR vaccine. They say 90% of those who are not vaccinated or who have not had a previous measles infection will become infected. 90%. Well, I sat down with the local infectious disease expert at Dell Medical School, Dr. Rama Thiagarajan.
So the State Health Department of Texas has actually, as of today, I think they just released the latest case count, has about 124 cases of measles as part of an outbreak predominantly in Gaines County. But if you look at the state health website and their cases, there have been other cases in other counties as well.
How serious is measles? Because it's something that we grew up not even having to worry about because of the vaccine.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So for most people, I think measles is a clinical illness where generally affecting younger people, children or kids in school, grade school. And it's a respiratory illness. It starts as a respiratory illness, and people have a runny nose or a little bit of cough or watering of the eye. They may have a spot or two in their mouth, and then it starts as a rash that starts from the head and then kind of spreads down. For majority of people, it's a mild illness that will take you out of school, obviously, or work, because it's very contagious. You will not be allowed to. I would say it's about a 7 to 10 day illness. But it is not uncommon for people to have a serious, like a pneumonia, serious respiratory infection, or inflammation of the brain. So this happens in about 1 to 2 cases per 1,000. So I would say it's not very common, but it can happen, and it's preventable.
Why is it that people are not taking the MMR vaccine or deciding to have their kids vaccinated? Have you seen that? And if so, why do you think that is?
I think Texas is one of the states where vaccination rates in school-age children is lower compared to the national average of about 92%. I think the rate in some counties are around 80%. And the reasons are many. I think there has been concerns. I think, as you know, with the COVID pandemic, there was a lot of pushback about vaccination. So that has something to do with it. I think the primary factor is that we live in a community with a lot of people who are vaccinated. So many of the folks who are making decisions about avoiding vaccines have not seen vaccine preventable illness and the benefits of vaccination. So I will go back and kind of give you an example of the scope or how big this problem was around 1963, before the vaccine came out. I think I have some statistics here. There were on an average, about 3 to 4 million cases in the United States annually. About 500,000 were reported. Most people just took care of it. In one person in the household got it, especially a child. The entire, all the children got it. But there were about, 500 deaths, about 50,000 hospitalizations, and about 1,000 of them developed serious brain swelling. So that's where we were. And with the benefit of vaccination, the MMR vaccine, 2 doses of vaccine, has a 97% protection against measles. So I think this may be the reason the younger generation or people that have not seen these kind of illnesses question the value of vaccination. And there have been reports very early on. I would probably say in the 90s, and there was some association with autism or the spectrum disease, ASD, but multiple studies subsequently have proved that this is not correct and vaccines are safe. So I think the public may have some concerns about the safety of the vaccine, But we know through many, many studies that vaccines are safe. They may have minor side effects, but they're very safe, and they are, especially for measles, more than 95% protects you against severe measles.
What about for the adults out there or immunocompromised people, and they don't know it's been so long since maybe they were or were not vaccinated? I'm 48. I'll just say I don't know what happened 40 some years ago. What do we need to worry about? Do we need to get booster shots? Do we need to search through our records?
Yeah, probably a little bit of everything. Yeah. So I think it's good for each of us to see where we are, right? What is our risk? When I say our, people in our family, our children, our elderly, just kind of assess what is our risk of getting measles. And part of it is because we may be in Gaines County. Gaines County is different than the counties that we're in. I live in Travis County. So we have to kind of see what is our risk. If there is a question, I think the best thing is to pull out your vaccination records. And I know that is not easy for several of us. It's not there handy. But if it's available, I think you need to make sure that you can get access to that and look. And if you've had 2 doses of vaccine, MMR vaccine, you don't need to worry about. You would be considered protective. Okay. If you have had 1 dose, and if you live in a county where there is measles cases, because we know this outbreak is going to grow. So if you live in a county where there's outbreak cases, definitely get yourself a second shot. If you do not know your vaccination status, I think we would recommend, especially if you're in a county where there is outbreak and there are a lot of cases, or your immune system is weak, that if you're going to get measles, and it's applicable adults too, people who have cancer, who take immune suppressive medications. And if you're not sure about your vaccination status, you definitely should be receiving 2 doses of MMR vaccine a month apart.
So there's no danger in getting another one now if you're not sure.
That's correct. It's very safe. Absolutely.
What you talked about, I think the math is 0.1% of the measles cases back in the day became serious. How does that compare to the flu or to COVID, things like that?
Again, I think you have to look at the population. I can't just talk about COVID, because COVID, the pandemic stretched on for several years, right? What we are seeing with COVID and deaths now is different than what we saw with COVID at the onset of the pandemic. So it's really hard to compare numbers. The same thing is true for influenza. Every year is different. The strains are different. And also population risk is different for different populations. So a 30-year-old is not the same as a 70-year-old who has weak immune system and is on cancer chemotherapy. Certainly, certain immunocompromised or immunosuppressed or people with weak immune systems cannot take this vaccine because it's what we call a live attenuated vaccine. But there are other treatments for them to prevent measles if they're exposed to a case. They can speak to the health department or their providers. They can get immune globulins. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. The last question I could think of is, what would you say to the moms and dads out there who, I've talked to some of them, who are scared to send their kids to school because it obviously is so, spreadable, so contagious? What would you say to them?
I would say look to see where you are. If you are in an outbreak county, or if you receive any communication from the public health department, the schools, definitely be on the lookout. But there is no reason for people to panic, really. It's a very contagious respiratory skin illness, but there is no reason. If you have a healthy child, and if your child has received 2 doses of vaccine, there is no reason to panic. Now, if the child is obviously, if you have a baby that's less than a year old, and if you live in a county where there's outbreak and you feel if the child goes to daycare, definitely think about getting your baby, 1 dose of MMR. 6 to 11 months of age is is the recommendation given this outbreak setting. But again, your healthcare provider is the best person to answer all these questions. If you are also you're looking for guidance, certainly the Texas State Health Department has a lot of guidance that's applicable. The CDC also has a lot of resources that's available to the public that would be useful. I would say there is no need to panic.